Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Pallavi Manchanda, and with me Nishit Kumar is bringing glimpses of major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring for you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. In this edition, we have an exclusive interview with Ms. Argentina Matavele, resident representative of the UN Population Fund, India. As the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, we begin the program with a message of precaution to stay safe and protected by following these three simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. The headlines. India gears up for One Nation, One Gas Grid and expansion of gas-based economy, says Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India shall be the voice for developing world at UN Security Council, asserts its permanent representative at UN. Bill Gates and WHO laud India's efforts in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. Britain goes into third lockdown. Prime Minister Boris Johnson postpones India's visit due to surge in coronavirus cases. Georgia goes to polls to elect 2 UN senators amid high stakes for the control of US Senate. And Argentina's renowned filmmaker Pablo Cesar to head the jury at 51st International Film Festival of India. India is gearing up for One Nation, One Gas Grid, and the focus is on expansion of gas economy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said today that the rapid expansion of gas-based economy is a must to achieve self-reliant India. He dedicated Kochi-Mangaluru natural gas pipeline to the nation and said the government plans to achieve One Nation, One Gas Grid. He underlined the need to shift to a gas-based economy as this has several environmental benefits.
Our energy agenda is all-inclusive. Since 2014, we have brought in various reforms across the oil and gas sector. These reforms cover exploration and production, natural gas marketing and distribution. We plan to achieve One Nation, One Gas Grid. We also want to shift to gas-based economy. The use of natural gas has several environmental benefits. The government is taking policy initiative to increase the share of natural gas in India's energy basket from 6% to 15%.
India raised its flag to formally begin its 8th tenure at the UN Security Council in New York on Monday. The flag installation ceremony was instituted by Kazakhstan. The ceremony marks the official induction of the new entrants into the UN Security Council family. India's permanent representative to the UN ambassador, Tirumurti, thanked the outgoing members for their contribution. He said India is inspired by their efforts and will be the voice for the developing world.
India comes into the Security Council as the largest democracy, representing 1/6 of humanity, and with a very strong commitment to reformed multilateralism, rule of law, a fair and equitable international system, and to peace, security and development. From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, we stand united as one, bound by our ethos of democracy, pluralism, and commitment to fundamental rights. We will use our tenure to bring human-centric and inclusive solutions to matters of international peace and security. India will be a voice for the developing world. We will not shy away from raising our voice against the common enemies of humanity like terrorism, peacekeeping, peace building, maritime security, women and youth, especially in conflict situations, and technology with a human face will receive our attention while on the Council. We look forward to our collective pursuit for an ideal where the world is one family. Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam.
President of the UN General Assembly, Volkan Bozkır, congratulated the new members of the UN Security Council. He also wished them success in their important work during the 2-year term in support of global peace and prosperity. India joins Ireland, Kenya, Mexico and Norway as the 5 new non-permanent members of the Council. Meanwhile, Tunisia has formally taken over as the President of the UN Security Council for a month starting Monday. The nation is celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Jasmine Revolution. Tarek Ladib, the country's permanent representative to the organization, laid out the program for the month of January soon after assuming presidency.
We will continue advocating for a more comprehensive and coordinated approach to peace and security. We will continue highlighting the necessity for the Security Council in discharging its main responsibilities of maintaining peace and security to take into consideration the multiple drivers of violence and instability which are feeding conflicts and destabilizing states.
Outgoing U.S. Ambassador to India, Ken Jester, has said that Washington is committed towards enhancing bilateral relationship with New Delhi. Speaking at his farewell event in New Delhi today, he said a strong and democratic India is an important partner to promote peace and prosperity. Speaking on the Indo-Pacific region, he said that it is particularly significant for the U.S.-India relationship. It recognizes the reality that India and Indian Ocean are inextricably tied to East Asia and the Pacific.
At the Shangri-La Dialogue in 2018, Prime Minister Modi presented India's vision of a free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific region. The Indo-Pacific is particularly significant for the U.S.-India relationship because it recognizes the reality that India and the Indian Ocean are inextricably tied to East Asia and the Pacific. India's expanding economy is likely to become an increasingly important driver of growth for the region, while trade and investment among the Indo-Pacific nations, including the United States, will continue to provide a major impetus for India's growth. For the U.S.-India relationship, the Indo-Pacific means that at a time of great change and challenge, we see India as a critical partner in preserving and expanding the peace and prosperity that have underpinned this dynamic region.
On the Indo-US strategic cooperation, Ambassador Jester said that the U.S. national security strategy welcomed India's emergence as a leading power and a stronger strategic and defense partner as early as in 2017 itself.
Global leaders have rallied behind India's efforts to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Microsoft founder and noted philanthropist Bill Gates in a tweet said that it's great to see India's leadership in scientific innovation and vaccine manufacturing capability as the world works to end the COVID-19 pandemic. The Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has lauded India's role in the fight against pandemic. In a tweet, he posted that India continues to take decisive action and demonstrate its resolve to end the COVID-19 pandemic. Referring to India as the world's largest vaccine producer, he said it is well placed to end the pandemic. The Indian government today said that the daily positivity rate of COVID-19 is continuously declining and has been less than 3% from 3rd December to 5th January. Briefing media in New Delhi, Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan said average recovered cases exceeded average daily new cases for last 5 weeks. He said active cases are less than 2.5 lakhs after 6 months and declining. Mr. Bhushan said daily number of deaths less than 300 for 11 consecutive days. He said cumulative positivity rate is 5.87% and positivity rate during the last week was 1.97%. He said in terms of cases per million of population till now, India has amongst the lowest in the world. He said India is still amongst the lowest in the world in terms of active cases and deaths of per million population. He added that active cases per million in India is 167 and deaths per million is 108. Speaking on the vaccine, the Union Health Secretary informed that based on feedback of dry run, government is ready to introduce COVID-19 vaccine within 10 days from date of emergency use authorization. Britain has entered into a nationwide lockdown to stem the surge in the cases of the new coronavirus variant. In a televised address on Monday, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said British hospitals are under more pressure from COVID than ever before.
It's clear that we need to do more together to bring this new variant under control while our vaccines are rolled out. In England, we must therefore go into a national lockdown which is tough enough to contain this variant.
Mr. Johnson also said that the nation has begun its vaccination program and its pace is accelerating.
We're now rolling out the biggest vaccination program in our history. So far, we in the UK have vaccinated more people than in the rest of Europe combined. With the arrival today of the UK's own Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, the pace of vaccination is accelerating.
The coronavirus surge in Britain has resulted in the postponement of India visit by the British Premier. He has postponed his upcoming visit to India due to the third lockdown in UK. In a statement, Mr. PM Johnson said he spoke to Prime Minister Modi this morning and expressed regret. It added that the speed of the spread of the new coronavirus variant made it important for Mr. Johnson to remain and focus on the domestic response to the virus. Mr. Modi expressed his understanding of the exceptional situation in the UK and conveyed his best wishes for the quick control of the pandemic spread. He looked forward to receiving Prime Minister Johnson in India at the earliest opportunity after normalization of the situation.
Scientists in South Africa have said that there is reasonable concern that the new variant of COVID-19 sweeping across the country might prove to be more resistant to current vaccines being rolled out in the UK and elsewhere. They warn that it makes the need for a global rollout of vaccines even more critical. The concern arises from the fact that the virus in the country has mutated far more than the variant in the UK, and one of those mutations might mean it can evade attack by antibodies that would normally fight coronavirus. The government of Bangladesh has granted approval for the emergency use of Oxford University AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine. The approval to import the vaccine was granted by the Directorate General of Drug Administration DGDA of Bangladesh late on Monday to Beximco Pharmaceuticals Limited BPL. The BPL has signed an agreement with the Serum Institute of India SII for importing 30 million shots of the vaccine for Bangladesh on December 13th.
3 steps to stay protected and stay safe from COVID-19. Wear face mask, 2 gaz ki duri to maintain social distancing, maintain hand and face hygiene.
In United States, Republicans and Democrats are vying for a victory in the crucial runoff elections in the state of Georgia. The election will determine who will control power in the U.S. Senate. Republicans currently hold a 50-48 advantage in the Senate. A Republican victory, even one of Tuesday's elections, would give the party a majority. This would also entail a right to set the Senate agenda and hold a majority on all Senate legislative committees. Gulf leaders have signed a solidarity and stability agreement at the 41st Gulf Cooperation Council Annual Summit in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. The summit was attended by the heads of the GCC member nations in Saudi Arabian city of Al Ula. Emir of Qatar also attended the GCC meeting. The GCC leaders signed Al Ula communique. Kuwait's Emir said that the Al Ula communique is a historic achievement and covers agreement on permanent solidarity. Ahead of the meet, Saudi Arabia on Monday had announced the reopening of land borders with Qatar. The development marks a significant phase in the region after 3 years. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, UAE and Bahrain had severed diplomatic and trade ties and imposed a land, sea and air blockade on the Qatar. South Korea has said it will send a delegation to Iran at the earliest possible date to try to negotiate the release of an oil tanker seized by Iran on Monday. Iran's Islamic Revolution Guards Corps have seized the tanker MT Hankuk Chemi in the Persian Gulf purportedly over environmental pollution. It has been taken to an Iranian port for examinations. Reports state that the ship's operator denies it polluted waters. Iran's ambassador in Seoul was summoned by South Korean Foreign Ministry to demand Tehran release the Hankuk Chemi tanker. South Korea has also dispatched a naval destroyer to the region.
The international jury for 51st edition of International Film Festival of India has been announced with eminent filmmakers from across the world. The jury will comprise Pablo Cesar of Argentina as chairman, Prasanna Vittanage of Sri Lanka, Abu Bakr Shauki of Austria, Priyadarshan of India and Rubaiyat Hossain of Bangladesh. Pablo Cesar is an Argentine filmmaker. He has contributed to the African cinema by making the critically acclaimed films Equinox, The Garden of the Roses, Los Dioses de Agua and Aphrodite, The Garden of the Perfumes. Calls to save the climate, to save the forest, to save water and to save the planet ring throughout the world by activists and concerned citizenry who rally to bring environmental issues under the scanner. Start to Save Slender Loris is one such cry from the southern district of Dindigul in Tamil Nadu. We have a report.
slender loris, or devangu, a small nocturnal primate, is found in the tropical rainforest, scrub forest, semi-deciduous forest and swamps in India and Sri Lanka. These animals are about 25 centimeters long and have long, thin arms and weigh less than 300 grams. Their prominent feature is the pair of two large brown eyes which glow in the dark. They are arboreal and live in trees and consume insects, flowers, leaves and eggs of birds. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has enlisted them under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of India. These are hunted as they are said to have mystical powers when used in black magic and occult. 11 tribal children have become ambassadors for saving slender loris from the Sukuvali cluster in the Ayalur forest range in Dindikal district. These girls hail from families with more than 5 daughters, orphans, children whose father is disabled and mother is the sole breadwinner, and school dropouts who are child laborers, and children living below poverty line. The girl children will be the first from the villages to attend higher education, which will be sponsored by Ponnamal Educational Trust. The tribals are hoping to revive the population of slender loris, joining with Bosch's conservation plan under its corporate social responsibility activity. Joy for World News, All India Radio, Chennai.
India's two leading firms producing the COVID-19 vaccines, Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute of India, allied public concerns over the accessibility of the vaccines. The two companies, in a joint statement issued on Tuesday, said they are committed to ensure a smooth rollout of vaccines as a duty to the nation and the world at large. The COVID pandemic has unraveled the differential impact that a health calamity can have on different sections of society. It has impacted more adversely the women and girls. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged nations to put women and girls at the center of efforts to recover from COVID-19. In this edition of Hotspot, we are in conversation with Ms. Argentina Matavel, resident representative of the UN Population Fund India. She discusses the life cycle approach to women's development.
We have with us Ms. Argentina Matavel, resident representative for UNFPA India and the country director for Bhutan. Ms. Argentina Matavel has been at the forefront of programs with the focus on rights and health of women and girls and giving a voice to them. Welcome, Ms. Matavel, to our program.
Thank you very much for having me representing UNFPA, the UN Population Fund.
We commemorate the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the global agenda for advancing the rights and empowerment of women and girls. How do you look at the progress on this front and where do we stand as of now?
Beijing was a very important and defining moment in terms of the world's recognition of the rights of women and girls as human rights and central to any development. But I must bring you back to the year before that. There was the famous International Conference on Population and Development in 1994. Because of that precursor conference, then Beijing comes in to cement that acceptance by the world, at least a commitment by the governments of the world that women and girls should be put at the center. We have come a long way. I mean, today, no one questions whether a girl should go to school or not. We have almost parity in terms of the gender of girls and boys going to school. You have women today in parliament, for example. Here in India, you have 11%. It sounds small, but when you look back at that time, it's quite a big stride. You have 26% participation in the formal labor force. Today, women can go to any health center in India and access sexual and reproductive health. The government put a budget for women's health. So I'm talking about all the advances that we've seen since. We need to continue until every single woman, every single girl has access to those services.
Can you explain a little bit for the benefit of our listeners, a life cycle approach?
The woman today who must be struggling because she doesn't make enough income, we need to go back to what happened before. Who were her parents? What levels did they have? What access to participation in the society did they have? That would be far back. But let's look even at when a woman is pregnant. What happened when her mother was pregnant? Did the mother have enough nutrition? When she was born, did she have all the cognitive functions that come with adequate nutrition, for example? When she was a baby, did she have breastfeeding by her mother? Did she have access, for example, to all the vaccinations? Did she go to school? Was she told how to control and manage and understand her reproductive life? Did she have a choice in the time when she was going to be married? Did she have access to family planning or how to space them? So you cannot, you see, look at just a given moment. You have to look at the entire life.
You're right that one has not to be seen it in isolation, rather than we have to adopt a holistic approach to say so. Over the years, what we have seen that in sync with the global context, India has moved from paradigm of women's development to women-led development. How do you see India's progress towards achieving the goal of gender equality in the years to come?
We can get there by 2030 if enough effort is put, but there's quite a lot to be done, even though, of course, looking back, India's independence, women were seen, at the forefront of science. I remember, for example, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. Yeah. You have Captain Lakshmi Sehgal. I mean, these are just few names. But then, for example, the famous conference in Cairo was only achieved because it was a lot of work that was done by women-led civil society movements. So they have been at the forefront. The same for Beijing. We have gender parity in primary school. True, we still have to look into the secondary school and the transition also from secondary to higher education, because quite a few girl children are still being married off or pulled out of school for various reasons by families. And so there's quite a lot to be done.
What is your take on whether we are moving in the right direction as far as harnessing the potential of youth is concerned, and that too especially in terms of the girls and the women?
We can say with conviction that we have come a long way and we're on the right track. I think India is on the right track. The youth have not been shy when consulted, for example, for the Government of India's voluntary national report for the SDGs that went on. The consultations went on last year, and youth was one of the groups that was consulted in different settings, and UNFPA was leading those consultations. They spoke about several things, and I'll summarize. They want affordable and quality education because they know that employment opportunities depend on the quality of their education. They want life skills education. If they have a comprehensive sexuality education, they will know how to control their bodies, how to protect themselves against unwanted pregnancy. Young people told us they want psychosocial support because when they are in adolescence, that's an age of many challenges where they're trying to grapple with understanding the world between childhood and adulthood, and a few are lost to suicide or to just nervous breakdowns. They want affordable, quality health care, including sexual and reproductive health. They don't want bias when they come to the health facility. Above all, they said they don't want any gender-based violence and harmful practices, including child marriage, including gender-biased sex selection. They spoke about their own participation in decision-making processes, and they were welcoming the consultation that went on for the VNR.
Another issue which has been really come into focus these days is COVID-19 pandemic. It has had a huge impact on the youngsters, especially the girls. What has been UN's response and strategies, and how do you look at the road ahead?
United Nations really early on partnered with government, be it at the central or state level, to make sure that key services did not stop. And of course, I speak now on behalf of my colleagues who work on education, like UNESCO, UNICEF, to make sure, for example, that number one, the education continued to happen even under lockdown. That's why you then have all these, we welcome the government's decision to provide online courses. But still you have many girls who have no access to the devices that are needed. So some remedial classes will have to be done now that we are slowly opening up. The United Nations also put in place hotlines, which were already some in existence, but we made sure that they did not stop providing mental support for young people. For example, in Madhya Pradesh, the government made the hotline accessible to all schools, to all children. And we have approximately 1,800 counselors that have been oriented by UNFPA alone to better equip them to respond to concerns concerns from a distance. We worked with young people and engaged them to be agents of change themselves. They were participating in spreading information for prevention of COVID. We have troops of young people throughout many states countering, for example, stigma and discrimination and misinformation using web platforms. We've oriented for that, just UNFPA alone, not speaking even about all the other agencies, 56,000 young people where they were using digital technologies, entertainment measures, radio, TV shows, which still go on to this day at the state level.
Another important issue is that how do we together be able to address the issues which come in terms of achieving healthy aging?
It's important that healthy living, health-seeking behaviors are adopted early on in life so that by the time we reach old age, we and the people of India in this case will enjoy a life of dignity, of good health and joy and peace that they deserve after having worked for so long. That the government, the population start thinking of avoiding sedentary lifestyles. It's important that people walk a little bit every day, that they are active. Otherwise, it's a recipe for a very poor and sad old age.
That was Ms. Arjentine Mettuvel. Thanks a lot for sharing your valuable insights. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having UNFPA with you. Thank you.
Now, let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. New York Times has reported that a top election official on Monday condemned President Trump over his false claims of voter fraud. The Guardian has reported that Chinese tycoon Jack Ma has fallen out of favor with Beijing and has not been seen or heard in public for more than 2 months. The Sydney Morning Herald has reported about 4 new locally acquired cases of COVID-19 in New South Wales. Himalayan Times has reported that the Nepal Supreme Court has issued a show-cause notice to the office of the Prime Minister for expanding the cabinet even after the dissolution of the House of Representatives. And moving on to sports, in cricket, Indian batsman KL Rahul has been ruled out of the ongoing India-Australia series due to a wrist injury. South Africa won the second and the final test match against Sri Lanka by 10 wickets to clinch the series 2-0. One-day international ODI cricket completed 50 years on the 5th of January. The first match was played out between Australia and England at the Melbourne Cricket Ground MCG. And in football, Southampton defeated Liverpool 1-0 in the English Premier League on Monday.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India gears up for one nation, one gas grid and expansion of gas-based economy, says Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India shall be the voice for developing world at UN Security Council, asserts its permanent representative at UN. Bill Gates and WHO laud India's efforts in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. Britain goes into third lockdown. Prime Minister Boris Johnson postpones India's visit due to surge in coronavirus cases. Georgia goes to polls to elect 2 U.S. senators amid high stakes for the control of U.S. Senate. And Argentina's renowned filmmaker Pablo Cesar to head the jury at 51st International Film Festival of India. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jain by artists from Sri Lanka.
Vaishnav Jain to tere kahiye je veer parai jaane re dar dukh ke upkar kare to ye man abhiman laane re Vaishnav Jain to tere kahiye je veer parai सकल लोक नाय सहुने वंदे निंदा न करे रे नाच खाच मन निश्चल राखे धन धन जननी तेरी रे वैष्णव जन तो तेरे कहिए वीर पराई
With that, we end this bulletin. See you at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.